welcome to Radically Distinct Radio. I'm your host, Jenn Morgan, and today we're going to talk about authenticity, what it means, and how to show up in the world authentically. So I coach a lot of people who are really good at what they do, and they're also really nice people. And one of the things that they tend to say to me when we start working together is, you know what, Jenn, I am who I am, and I don't want to change myself in order to fit into what other people want me to be. And I think that that's a very interesting, and there's a validity in that. You want to be yourself and you want to be authentic. And at the same time, it really does get you stuck when trying to accomplish lots of goals. So let's start with, what is authentic? Authentic is to be genuine or not fake. And as a human, that can be tricky because there is not one version of who you are. If you think about it, the way you are with your boss is different than the way you are with the person you date or who you're married to, your partner. And the way that you are with your kids is much different than you are with either one of those people. And the reason is because your objectives are different. I think we get stuck when we try to be the same person all the time. Take, for example, an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur has to be a salesperson, a marketing person, a biz dev development person, an accountant, many different roles. And in a fully expressed company, those are different departments with different teams. But when you're an individual or a small group of individuals, you have to play all of those parts or all of those roles, but you're just still one person. And to do it in the same way would be ineffective. When you're a salesperson, you need to move people into a buying position. When you're a marketing person, you're trying to pull people in and wanting them to get to know more about what you are all about, to give them education. And when you're a biz dev person, what you're doing is you're looking for partnerships and the future of the company and where the company is going to go to next. If you start acting like a salesperson in a biz dev role, you will come across too pushy. If you try to act like a marketing person in a sales role, you're never going to get anybody to sign a contract. So each role that you play in your life has a different way of being, right? It's a different way that you show up. And I call those energetic modes. The energetic modes are the different ways that you can show up in the world to cause an effect. And to do it well, it requires a strong sense of yourself, independent of the task at hand, and clarity of what you're trying to accomplish. A peacock struts its tail feathers in order to attract a mate. And mama bear growls and intimidates another animal in order to protect her young. Those are energetic modes. Now, a peacock is not always strutting its tail feathers, and a mama bear is not always trying to intimidate other animals. So just like a peacock or a bear, you're an animal. And we have instincts that are ingrained in our DNA that cause us to respond to situations in certain ways. It could be from learned behaviors, but it can also be from deeply ingrained patterns that have kept you alive and like your lineage alive. I mean, the fact that you're alive today and there are many other humans that did not make it, other lineages of humans that didn't survive into 2016, 2017. So you might find yourself flirting with someone without intending to, or fronting to a colleague without meaning to. And because of something about that situation, it elicited a reaction that came from some memory in your memory bank that maybe in retrospect, you didn't mean for that to occur, but it did. And those situations can be very embarrassing if you're caught flirting with the wrong person at the wrong time or losing your temper in a work situation. Those can damage your reputation. And so what we end up doing is we start self-editing in order to avoid repeating behaviors that we've done in the past that we didn't like, that didn't serve our purpose. And the problem with self-editing is that you start to lose connection with yourself. And more specifically, you lose the ability to know your true feelings of a situation. Without access to your feelings, how can you respond honestly? Or another way to say that, how can you respond genuinely or authentically? the answer is you can't. You're always going to have to put on a mask to show up in a way to protect your reputation instead of proactively letting people know who you are in your responses. So to be authentic, what you have to do is to be in touch with your feelings, how you feel about a situation. You have to have a strong sense of yourself, of knowing of who you are, such a strong sense that you don't need other people to validate that part for you. That gives you the ability to focus on your objective. Now, to achieve an objective, you have to be able to change your way of being or your energetic mode on the spot completely. And that can be very challenging to do, especially if you are stuck in the idea of, I am who I am and I don't want to change who I am in order for other people to like me. But if you can't change the way that you're being, then you're going to be stuck not being able to achieve your objective, because the same way you're showing up in one situation does not work in another situation. So in order to be effective and to be genuine, you have to get comfortable with changing how you're showing up and not be attached to this idea of, I am who I am and I don't want to change who I am, because if I change who I am, then I'm not being who I am. If you really think about that statement, it's quite selfish and stubborn, and quite honestly, it's really not true. Because I said before, you show up differently depending upon your objective, whether or not you realize it. So if you're trying to attract a mate, you act in a certain way. If you're trying to get a job, you act in a certain way. Those are different energetic modes. It's in the resisting that you need to change those modes in order to accomplish your objective. It's in that resistance that you have to fake it, that you have to mask your true feelings and morph yourself into someone that you're not. To show up authentically, you need to accept all the colors of who you are and learn to use them in the right time and in the right amount. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to make a list of all the roles that you play in your life. You know, I'm a daughter. I'm a wife. I'm a mother. I'm an employee. I'm a coach. Make a list of all the roles you play. And then after you make the list, ask yourself, do I show up in the same way in each one of these roles? If the answer is no, then what's the difference? Those differences are your range. If the answer is yes, then I want you to ask yourself, am I being effective? Because a lot of people find when they do this exercise that the answer is often no. They're finding themselves having some trouble maybe with their boss. And one of the reasons that they're having trouble with their boss because they're treating their boss like they might treat their child, which would you can just imagine that would be a very disrespectful tone or disrespectful way of being. Or maybe they're treating somebody who is of equal authority within their organization like they would treat somebody who is a direct report to them, right? So those are different energetic modes, and they require you to be a different side of yourself in order to be successful. When you treat somebody like your partner, like you would treat your boss, you're not going to be effective. And if you treat your partner like they're your child, you're also not going to be effective. So asking yourself, am I the same one in each role, will help you start to figure out the range of energetic modes that you have access to and how you might be able to switch it up and change it up in order to be more successful at influencing another person. So to show up in the world authentically, to recap, you need a strong sense of yourself independent of the task at hand. Personal branding does that for you. When you have an understanding of your personal brand, you can apply it to multiple different tasks, multiple different job roles, multiple different projects. And you need to have clarity of your objective. So having a strong sense of yourself and having clarity of your objective, what that does is it frees you up to utilize the right energetic mode for the situation at hand so that you can play the role that you need to play in order to achieve the goal you have. All right. This has been Jenn Morgan. And if you love this show, please go on over to iTunes and rate and review the show so that we can get more people listening in and learning how to be their most powerful brand. If you are not already following us on Instagram, please head over to Instagram and follow us at Radically Distinct. And we're on Facebook at Radically Distinct. And I'm on Twitter at Jenn Morgan Brand. Until next time, this is Jenn Morgan, empowering you to be radically distinct. Hello and welcome to Radically Distinct Radio. I'm your host, Jenn Morgan. And today I want to talk about authenticity, what it means, and how to show up in the world as an authentic representation of your brand. I work with a lot of really talented people who are also very nice. And one of the things that they all tend to say when they start working with me is, Jenn, I am who I am, and I don't want to change who I am in order to fit into someone else's mold of who I'm supposed to be. And I think that this way of thinking about yourself is actually the cause of not being able to show up authentically in the world. So I'm going to break that down for you from where I'm coming from. First of all, the definition of authentic is genuine or not fake. And as humans, it's tricky to be authentic because there is not one version of who you are. Who you are with your boss is different than who you are with your partner or your husband or your wife. And it's also different. You're also different when you're with your children or with somebody else's children. And the reason is that your objectives are different. We get stuck when we're trying to be the same person all the time. If you think about an entrepreneur, for example, an entrepreneur has to be a salesperson, a marketing person, a business development person, a visionary person, and a fully expressed company. All of those roles are departments, right? They're completely different departments with multiple people in them. But when you're an individual or a very small team trying to realize an idea in the world, you have to play multiple different roles. Now, in order to play different roles, you have to have different ways of being. Different ways of being are what I call energetic modes. Energetic modes are the different ways that you show up to cause an effect. And to do so requires a strong sense of yourself, independent from the task at hand, and clarity of what you're trying to accomplish. Now, I think that just to kind of back up for a second, if you try to be a salesperson in the same way that you are a marketing person, you're going to have a challenging time getting a person to sign a contract. If you are trying to be a business development person in the same way that you are a salesperson, you're going to come across really pushy and kind of desperate because it's not the same objective. Now, I'm going to simplify this even more. Think about a peacock. A peacock struts its tail feathers in order to attract a mate. And mama bear, she, shows her fangs and gets really aggressive in order to protect her young. Now, just like a peacock and a bear, you are an animal. And you have instincts ingrained in your DNA that cause you to respond to a situation in a certain way. So you might find yourself flirting with someone, but you didn't realize that you were, or you didn't intend to, or fronting to a colleague without meaning it, because something about the situation elicited that kind of a response within you that you didn't even it's not like you were like, oh my gosh, now I'm going to become a jerk. That's not what happens. It just happens. And then in retrospect, you realize what happened and the ways in which that you got triggered. And that can be very embarrassing, especially if you get caught flirting with the wrong person or you lose your temper in a high stakes situation, such as like a boardroom meeting. And the reason why it's embarrassing is because it's damaging to your reputation. People form ideas about you and who you are. So what ends up happening quite naturally to all of us is we start to self-edit to avoid repeating past mistakes. And while self-editing is an important part of being able to fit into society, it's also the process from losing connection to yourself, and more specifically, losing the ability to know your true feelings. Without access to your feelings, how can you respond honestly to a situation or, in a way that is genuine or authentic? And the answer is that you can't. You're always going to have to put on a mask to show up in order to protect your reputation instead of proactively creating the reputation that you want. So you're always in a defensive mode. So to be authentic, you have to be in touch with your feelings, which requires you to have a strong sense of who you are. So strong, in fact, that you don't need other people to validate that. You don't need people to validate that you are who you are. You know who you are. And that gives you the ability to focus on your objective. Now, to achieve an objective, you have to change your way of being in order to suit the task at hand. So your energetic mode or your way of being, you have to be able to change that on the spot when things aren't working the way you're intending them to. And the reason that you have to be able to change that mode is so that the other person can actually understand what it is that you're intending with. Let's say you go and you want to pitch an idea to one of your colleagues and they're just getting all offended. Well, you can just start an argument with them, which is just going to cause them to shut down even more. Or you can try a different approach, which usually means the way that you are showing up needs to change. And the only way to do both, to be genuine and to be comfortable changing the way that you're showing up, is to not be attached to this idea of I am who I am and I can't change who I am in order to fit somebody else's idea of who I'm supposed to be, because that's just going to make you stuck. Because quite honestly, that statement in and of itself is selfish and stubborn, and it's quite honestly not true. You're going to show up differently depending on your objective, whether or not you realize what your objective is. So it's in the resisting of that you have to fake it till you make it, or you have to hide your true feelings or morph into someone that you're not. To show up authentically, you need to accept all the colors of who you are and learn how to use them at the right time and in the right amount. So here's what I want you to do. Make a list of all the roles that you play in your life. I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a coach, I'm a consultant, I'm a radio host, all these different roles that you play. And after you get them all written down, all the different roles that you play, I want you to ask yourself, do you show up the same way in each role? If no, what's the difference? How are you being different in each one? That's your range. And if the answer is yes in some of them, and then let me ask you, is that effective? There's a lot of people, when I have them do this exercise, find it surprises them that the answer is actually no, it's not effective. If they talk to their spouse in the same way that they talk to their kids, they end up in an argument. If they talk to their mother the same way they talk to their friends, their mother gets this kind of worried look on their face, right? So when you treat, and also if you treat or show up, so a lot of these things are very connected. It's like the way you show up is how other people feel like they're being treated by you, right? Like you have one intention and then there's how other people are receiving you. So if you can't force another person to receive you the way you want them to receive you. But what you can do is you can change your energetic mode so that they receive you the way you intend. So to show up in the world authentically, you have to have a strong sense of yourself, independent of the task at hand, which personal branding gives you. It gives you an understanding of yourself, independent of your job role, independent of your relationship status, independent of what trainings that you have, right? That's your personal brand. So you need a strong sense of yourself, independent of the task at hand, and clarity of your objective. When you have those two things, you're freed up to figure out how to utilize the right energetic mode for the situation at hand so that you can play the role that you need to play in order to achieve the goal you have. All right. So what do you think about that? Let me know. If you love this show, please go on over to iTunes and rate and review the show, because that really helps us out to get more people listening in. And if you aren't already, follow us on Instagram at Radically Distinct and on Facebook at Radically Distinct. And I'd love to talk to you on Twitter. I'm at Jenn Morgan Brands. And until next time, this is Jenn Morgan, empowering you to be radically distinct.